Autumn of 1889 brought with it a biting wind that howled through the empty streets of Silver Hollow, Wyoming. The late sun painted the cracked earth in shades of burnt gold, while distant smoke whispered that a few souls were still holding on. As the stagecoach rolled into the ghostly town, a young woman sat rigid inside, her auburn hair tousled by the breeze sneaking through the cracked window. Evelyn Harper, 23 years old, had left everything behind in Boston. In her hands, she held a few fading letters and a hope worn thin. She had come west to marry a man named Marcus Bell, a man whose words had promised her a home, peace, and perhaps even love. But when the stagecoach groaned to a stop on Silver Hollow's deserted main street, nothing matched those promises. No bustling storefronts, no welcoming crowd, just shuttered buildings, peeling signs, and the hollow echo of lives once lived. As Evelyn stepped down onto the splintered wooden boardwalk, the wind tugged at her skirts like a warning. She didn't know it yet, but that first step would become her beginning. She had come west on the strength of a lie, but perhaps this dying town, these dusty roads, and that old blacksmith shop would write her a different kind of destiny. The moment Evelyn Harper stepped off the stagecoach, the brittle wind of Wyoming slapped her cheeks like a warning she was too stubborn to heed. Her boots hit the warped planks of Silver Hollow's boardwalk with a hollow thud. She clutched her single carpet bag in one hand, the other pressing a bonnet tighter against her ears. The town stretched before her in silence. No welcoming party, no bustling shops. Just shuttered windows and rusted signs swaying in the breeze. This wasn't what Marcus Bell had described. In his letters, Silver Hollow had been a growing town, full of promise and good people. He'd written about his trading post, about socials at the town hall, about a place where a refined woman like Evelyn could build a life. He'd included a bank draft for her fare and instructions for a wedding dress waiting at the local dry goods store. But as Evelyn stared at the empty street, her stomach turned. The dry goods store was boarded up. The church steeple leaned to one side. Not a soul walked the dusty main road. Even the horses tied up at the livery looked bored of waiting. "You sure this is Silver Hollow?" she asked the driver, her voice cracking from disuse. Thomas Murphy, the coachman, climbed down slowly. His face was weathered by years and weather alike. "'Fraid so, miss. Been Silver Hollow since the mines dried up and the railroad skipped past it. Ain't much left now. But I'm here to meet Marcus Bell. We've been corresponding. He owns a store here." Murphy removed his hat, rubbed the back of his neck, and looked at her with pity. "Ma'am, I hate to be the one to say it, but Marcus Bell passed away late last winter. Fever took him quick. Store's been closed ever since. I've delivered 3 other young ladies here this year, all with letters from the same man." The world tilted. Evelyn's knees nearly gave out, and she gripped the post of the coach to steady herself. "He's dead," she whispered. "Yup. Whoever sent those letters, it wasn't him. Someone's playing a cruel trick. I'm sorry." She felt her chest tighten like a vice. She had sold everything. Her mother's mirror, her father's books, her last respectable dress, to get on that train. She had nothing left but 17 cents and a carpet bag filled with the barest essentials. And now she stood in a town that barely breathed, without a groom, without a plan, and without a way back. Murphy gently placed her bag on the ground. "Only folks still here are the real stubborn ones. You might find a bed at Ida Walsh's place, boarding house at the end of the street." "And the store?" she asked, her voice barely a thread. "Where the dress was supposed to be." He just looked at her. The answer was obvious. As the stagecoach pulled away, the sound of its wheels fading into the wind, Evelyn stood alone in the middle of a street that felt more like a graveyard than a town. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Crying was a luxury for later. For now, she picked up her bag and walked toward the only building that looked remotely alive. The boarding house was a 2-story structure with fading shutters and empty flower boxes beneath the windows. The porch had been swept recently, and a thin wisp of smoke curled from the chimney. Before she could knock, the door creaked open. A sturdy woman in her 50s appeared, apron dusted with flour and hair pinned in a practical bun. Her eyes landed on Evelyn with practiced recognition. "Let me guess," she said with a sad smile. "Another bride for my late husband." Evelyn froze. You, you're Mrs. Bell? No, honey. Name's Ida Walsh. Marcus was a friend. Lived across the street. But I've seen enough girls like you to recognize one. You'd best come in. Evelyn didn't argue. Inside, the parlor smelled faintly of old lavender and something baking. The furniture was mismatched but clean. A piano sat in the corner, untouched and slightly out of tune. Ida led her to a chair and poured her a cup of coffee without asking. "Where are you from?" Ida asked gently. "Boston," Evelyn answered numbly. "Long way to come for a ghost." Evelyn managed a bitter laugh. "He sent money, letters, descriptions of this town, of a life." Ida nodded. "They all say that. Someone's been sending those letters for months, maybe out of boredom, maybe out of malice, maybe just to see what kind of hope a stamp can still carry." "I have nothing," Evelyn admitted, her voice cracking. "No money, no family. Just this bag and 17 cents. Ida sat down across from her, sighing. "You can stay here tonight. No charge. Tomorrow we'll see what can be done." "Is there work?" Evelyn asked, too desperate to pretend she wasn't. "Any work at all?" Ida hesitated. "Sam Briggs runs the general store, though it's barely more than a trading post now. Might need help. There's Malcolm Reed, the blacksmith, but he keeps to himself. Doesn't talk to anyone unless he has to." "Malcolm Reed," Evelyn repeated. "Would he hire a woman?" "Doubt it," Ida snorted. "He barely tolerates men. Lost his wife a few years back. Hasn't been the same since. But if you want honest work, he's the only one left actually earning coin." Evelyn stared into her coffee, steam rising like ghost trails. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know who she could trust or whether she'd ever leave this place. But one thing was certain. Silver Hollow might have been dying, but she wasn't dead yet. And as long as her feet still stood on this soil, she'd find a way to survive. Morning came with the gray hush of frost. Evelyn Harper rose before the sun, her breath fogging in the chilly room Ida Walsh had prepared for her. She dressed in her only other outfit, a plain wool dress and sturdy boots, and tied her hair back with a ribbon that had long since frayed. There was no mirror, just a basin of cold water, a towel, and the echo of her own determination. Downstairs, the scent of coffee and baked apples greeted her. Ida moved briskly between the stove and the table, setting out breakfast for her boarders, two elderly cattlemen and a farm wife nursing a broken arm. Evelyn offered to help, but Ida waved her off. "You'll need your strength," she said with a knowing look. "Malcolm Reed doesn't give out second chances." Evelyn hesitated. "You really think he'll turn me away?" Ida didn't answer. She just slid a slice of warm cornbread onto Evelyn's plate. The blacksmith's forge stood at the far end of Silver Hollow's main street, its brick chimney coughing smoke into the cold morning air. The building looked sturdier than most, its walls thick with soot and history. Outside, a pair of worn horseshoes hung nailed to the wooden door like a crude sign. Evelyn stepped over the cracked threshold and peered into the low-lit interior. Sparks flared with every swing of the hammer. The man wielding it was built like an oak, broad-shouldered, every movement purposeful. He didn't look up. "I'm not open yet," he grunted, setting the hot metal on an anvil. "I'm not here as a customer," Evelyn said, voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm looking for work." The hammer paused midair. Slowly, the man straightened and turned toward her. His eyes were a startling pale blue, made more intense by the soot streaking his face. His beard was unkempt, peppered with gray, and his expression unreadable. "You're the girl off yesterday's coach," he said, "the one looking for a ghost." "I'm Evelyn Harper," she replied. "Yes, I came expecting to marry Marcus Bell. Clearly that's not going to happen. I need to earn my keep." "I don't hire women," Evelyn bristled. "Do you hire people who know how to read ledgers, track supply orders, and clean up chaos?" "I don't need a secretary." She stepped closer, ignoring the heat of the forge that licked her cheeks. "I saw your inventory board on the way in. You've got prices crossed out, jobs half listed, and no payment records in sight. You're losing money you probably can't afford to lose." His jaw tensed, but he didn't argue. "I'm not asking for charity," she continued. "Room and board in exchange for organization. If I collect anything you're owed, maybe we split it." "I work alone," he said flatly, turning back to the forge. Evelyn stood her ground. "Then you'll go broke alone." The hammer struck again. He didn't look at her. After a long silence, he muttered, "You've got brass, I'll give you that." "But no job," she said, the chill returning to her bones. He didn't answer. She left before she could feel the sting of tears. Back on Main Street, Evelyn trudged through slushy snow toward the general store. The bell above the door jingled weakly as she stepped inside. Silas Briggs, a wiry man in his 60s with tired eyes and a ledger older than sin, looked up from behind the counter. "Let me guess. Marcus Bell wrote you letters, promised the world, and sent you into the dust." "That's about right," Evelyn replied, stepping up to the counter. "Ida said you might need help." "I told her I can't pay," he muttered, barely keeping the shelves stocked. "What if I worked on commission?" she offered. "I looked through your books, tracked down who owes what. If I collect anything, I take a percentage." He squinted. "You know how to read accounts?" "Better than most men I've met." Silas scratched his chin. "Well, the Prescott boys owe me $26. Always say they'll settle after the next cattle sale. But I'll be damned if I've seen a dime in 2 years. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Prescott, as in the gang?" "They call themselves ranchers," Silas said darkly. "But they ride more than they herd." She pressed her lips together. "I'll start with someone easier." He slid a ledger across the counter. "You want a miracle, Miss Harper? Be my guest." By afternoon, Evelyn had set up a makeshift desk in the corner of the store and gone through 3 ledgers. Silas watched from behind the counter as she frowned, flipped pages, muttered numbers. "You're really doing it," he said, incredulous. "I've already found $87 in unpaid credit, and a handful of folks you've double-charged by mistake." "Those books were a mess," he admitted. "They were a disaster," she corrected. That evening, a writer arrived. Evelyn stood when she saw the Prescott name stitched onto the man's jacket. "I'm here on behalf of Briggs," she said before he could say a word. "According to this ledger, your family owes him for hardware and winter goods." The writer spat to the side. "You calling us thieves?" "I'm calling you overdue." He looked ready to snap, but Silas stepped out from behind the counter and nodded. "She's right, Garrett. Time to settle." To Evelyn's surprise, the man fished coins from his saddlebag and tossed them on the counter. "Tell the lady next time she sends a message, she ought to use a pistol instead of a pen." But he paid. That night, Evelyn sat at the table in Ida's kitchen, hands sore from writing, head spinning from numbers. "You poked the Prescotts?" Ida asked, half impressed, half alarmed. "He paid," Evelyn replied, "and I didn't even raise my voice." Ida poured her a cup of tea. "You're not like the others, Evelyn. Most of the girls who came got back on the next coach. But you've got something different." Evelyn stared out the window toward the forge, where a thin ribbon of smoke still rose into the stars. "I've got no way back," she said softly, "so I might as well make something here." And somewhere in the warm dark of his workshop, Malcolm Reed paused at his ledger. The numbers still didn't make sense, but one name echoed in his mind longer than the rest. Evelyn Harper. The forge door creaked open just after dawn. A bitter wind chased Evelyn Harper inside, her cheeks flushed with cold, her boots dusted in frost. Malcolm Reed looked up from his anvil, brows lowering. "I told you I don't take apprentices." "I'm not here to beg," Evelyn said, setting a bundle on the bench. "I brought fresh records. Your ledgers were a mess." He grunted, not denying it. She untied the cloth and spread out several neatly inked pages. "This is everything you're owed. Cleanly organized, itemized by date and customer. You're missing over $100 in unpaid jobs." Malcolm wiped soot-stained hands on his apron, leaning in. His blue eyes scanned the figures, then flicked back to hers. "And how much of this do you think I'll actually see?" "If you follow up," she said, "more than you'd expect." "I don't have time to chase people who can't pay." "No, but I do." Silence stretched between them. The only sounds were the low crackle of the fire and the wind raking across the roof. "You want to work here that badly?" he finally asked. "No," Evelyn said plainly. "But I need to stay in Silver Hollow, and I refuse to do it by pity or handouts. I've got a brain for numbers and hands that know how to work." Malcolm crossed his arms. "You ever swing a hammer?" "No." "You ever hold a pair of tongs?" "No." "Then what makes you think you belong here?" Evelyn met his gaze without flinching. "Because I don't scare easy. And because I've survived worse than heat and metal. Malcolm studied her, eyes narrowing, then turned away and selected a bar of iron from the stockpile. You want to stay? You learn. You keep the books, sweep the floor, and if I tell you to haul coal, you haul it. Evelyn didn't move. And wages? He paused, then said, you get meals at Ida's, a cot in the back room, and a cut of what's collected if your books are right. She held out her hand. Deal. Malcolm glanced at it, then wiped his hand once more before clasping hers in a grip rough as rawhide. Don't expect me to go easy, he muttered. I wouldn't respect you if you did, Evelyn replied. By mid-morning, she was elbow-deep in grime, sweeping ash from under the workbench. Her fingers were already blistering, her back aching from hauling coal to the furnace. But she didn't complain. She learned fast how to sort scrap from stock, how to cool iron without cracking it, and the rhythm of the bellows. Malcolm spoke little, but when he did, it was precise. Too hot, it'll split. Angle the chisel. Wipe your brow before the sweat hits the metal. Evelyn obeyed, observed, and when he wasn't looking, took notes in a small journal she kept in her skirt pocket. That evening, after the fire was banked and the forge dark, Evelyn spread her ledger work across the bench. Malcolm sat across from her, frowning at her columns of ink. You split repairs into categories. Shoes, plows, hinges, wagon parts. So you can see what's most in demand and what brings in the most. Malcolm rubbed his jaw. You're better at this than I thought. Don't sound so surprised, he snorted. Surprise is the only honest reaction I have left these days. Evelyn lifted her gaze. You've been alone a long time, haven't you? Malcolm didn't answer right away. Since Anna died, 3 winters ago. I'm sorry, she said, her voice softening. Everyone says that. He paused. But it doesn't change anything. No, it doesn't, Evelyn agreed. But building something new might. He didn't reply, but he didn't look away either. In the following days, Silver Hollow began to notice the change. Sam Briggs told anyone who'd listen that Evelyn Harper had sorted years of unpaid debts and had customers finally settling accounts. Ida Walsh beamed every time Evelyn returned from the forge with soot on her cheeks and numbers in her head. She also brought an idea. A cooperative order system, she explained at the general store. Everyone in town is too small to make big purchases alone, but together we'd qualify for supplier discounts. Silas Briggs was skeptical. You're talking about coordinating ranchers and shopkeepers who haven't agreed on anything since the railroad bypassed us. Then maybe it's time they start, Evelyn said. Winter's coming. If we don't get supplies now, this town won't make it to spring. Silas rubbed his temples. You'd run it? I already have the numbers. Malcolm was quiet when she told him later. You're not afraid of biting off too much, are you? I'm afraid of biting off nothing, she replied. That's how towns die. One silence at a time. Malcolm chuckled, low and reluctant. You sound like Anna. Evelyn blinked. She was a bookkeeper? She was everything. Talked too much, believed too hard, drove me crazy. He paused and then added, made me better. Evelyn returned to her ledger, but his words stayed with her like the lingering scent of smoke. One morning, as the first snow dusted the rooftops, Malcolm handed her a small hammer. Today you strike. Evelyn's arms shook with the effort. Every blow felt like it rattled her bones, but she kept going, even when her palms blistered. Grip it higher, Malcolm instructed. Use your hips, not your shoulders. She adjusted, and the next strike rang true. Better. By dusk, she had forged her first nail. It wasn't straight, it wasn't pretty, but it was hers. She held it up proudly. You gonna sell it? Only if the buyer's blind, Malcolm muttered, but a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. That night, Evelyn returned to Ida's boarding house with iron under her nails, fire in her veins, and a journal full of supplier contacts and cooperative plans. Silver Hollow was no longer just a place she'd stumbled into. It was becoming hers. The first real snow of the season clung stubbornly to the rooftops and dusted the boardwalks of Silver Hollow as Evelyn Harper crossed Main Street with purpose. The morning air bit through her coat, but she didn't falter. She had a ledger tucked under one arm and a resolve hard as forged iron. Sam Briggs was already sweeping the porch of the general store when she arrived. You're early, he said, pushing his broom aside. We've got orders to finalize today. If we want to get the shipment from Cheyenne before the next freeze, we can't delay." Sam looked skeptical, but he stepped inside and held the door for her. Evelyn moved to the counter and opened her ledger, flipping to the cooperative list. Bradley's, Weatherby's, the old Wilkins place, they've all pledged to contribute if we can secure nails, tools, and grain before month's end. "Assuming they follow through," Sam muttered. "They will," Evelyn said, "because if they don't, there won't be enough supplies to go around, and no one survives a winter like this alone." Sam glanced toward the window. "Let's hope you're right." But hope alone wouldn't be enough to brace Silver Hollow for what came next. Just after midday, as Evelyn returned to the forge with a load of inventory notes, the unmistakable sound of hooves thundered into town. 3 riders appeared from the south, dust trailing behind them like smoke from a fire. The lead man wore a long leather coat and a wide-brimmed hat shadowing a scarred face. Evelyn's stomach turned. She didn't need an introduction. These men wore the reputation of the Prescott brothers like a second skin. She ducked into the forge just as Malcolm stepped out. "Get inside," he said gruffly. "Stay where it's safe." Evelyn didn't argue. From the doorway, she watched as the riders pulled up in front of Sam's store. The lead rider dismounted and strode onto the porch like he owned the place. Malcolm followed. Inside the store, shouting erupted. "You owe Mr. Prescott for that last delivery," the scarred man barked. "That was 3 months ago." Sam's voice trembled. "I paid what I could, but folks are slow on their accounts." The man's fist slammed against the counter. "Don't care. Prescott wants it by Friday, or we take what's owed." Evelyn saw Malcolm's frame stiffen, his fist clenched. "That's enough," he growled, stepping between Sam and the outlaw. "This isn't your bank, and it sure as hell ain't your town." The scarred man laughed coldly. "And who's gonna stop us, Blacksmith?" "You?" Before Malcolm could answer, Evelyn stepped forward. "Yes," she said loudly. "We are." All eyes turned to her. The outlaw's gaze swept over her with disdain. "You must be the bookkeeper I've heard about. Miss Harper, is it?" "It is," she said steadily. "And you're trespassing. Sam's debt isn't due until the end of the month, and even then, no agreement gave you the right to threaten him." The man took a step closer. "And what are you going to do about it? Lecture me into leaving?" Evelyn's voice didn't waver. "I'll give you something better. Merchandise. Valuable goods. A shipment is arriving tomorrow. Tools, grains, leather, worth more than Sam's debt." Malcolm's eyes snapped toward her. "Evelyn," she continued, "you want something for the debt? Take 3 wagons of goods. Your choice. That's more than fair." The Prescott man looked intrigued. 3 wagons, huh? It's either that or nothing, because there's no cash to squeeze from bones. He considered it. "Fine. But if we get there and it's not worth the ride, we'll be back." "You won't need to be," Evelyn said, cold as the wind outside. The outlaws rode off after dusk, promising to return in the morning. Inside the forge, Malcolm was furious. "You put the entire cooperative order on the line." "I saved Sam from being robbed, or worse," she snapped back, "and I bought us time. You gambled the town's winter survival on your silver tongue. And it worked," she said. "You think they were going to walk away peacefully? That they'd let us get through the winter without bleeding someone dry?" Malcolm's hands curled around the edge of the workbench. "They'll come back." "I know," she said quietly. He stared at her for a long moment. "You scare me sometimes." Evelyn blinked. "Why?" "Because you care too much. You'll throw yourself into the fire if it means pulling someone else out." She crossed her arms. "And you? You stand back and watch the fire burn." That hit something raw in him. Malcolm stepped closer, his voice low. "You don't know what I've lost in fires like this. Then let someone help this time." The silence stretched between them, crackling like embers. He didn't touch her, but he didn't turn away either. The next morning, the wagons arrived just after sunrise. Evelyn stood at the edge of the street, arms crossed, as the Prescott men circled the cargo like wolves. They chose 3 wagons: grain, leather, and hardware. The town would hurt for it, but not as badly as it would have for bloodshed. After the outlaws rode off with their bounty, a strange hush fell over Silver Hollow. And then applause, first from Sam, then from the Bradleys, then the rest. Evelyn turned, stunned. Malcolm stood on the boardwalk, arms crossed. "You've got guts," he muttered, then added quieter, "and a head for survival." Evelyn walked toward him, her boots crunching in the snow. "Still think I don't belong here?" He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "There's a harvest dance at the hall." Saturday. Evelyn tilted her head. "Are you asking me?" He hesitated, then nodded once. "I'm asking." She smiled. "Then I'll be there." As she turned to go, Malcolm called after her. "Wear something you don't mind getting dirty." Evelyn laughed. "You really know how to flatter a girl." But she didn't say no. The forge was alive with heat and rhythm, a steady percussion of hammer meeting iron that echoed down Silver Hollow's main street. Malcolm Reed worked with his usual intensity, focused, silent, unyielding. But he wasn't alone. Evelyn Harper stood a few feet away, her hands raw from the rasp and tongs. Her sleeves rolled high, cheeks flushed with heat and effort. She was dirty, bruised, and smiling. "You missed the angle," Malcolm grunted, nodding at the bent horseshoe on the anvil. "No," Evelyn countered, adjusting her grip. "I compensated for the slant in the stock. This horse favors its right leg. The bend needs to carry a little extra weight." Malcolm raised a brow. "You watch everything, don't you?" "I had to," she replied. "Back in Boston, if you weren't 3 steps ahead, you were 10 steps behind." He nodded slowly, then handed her a fresh bar of iron. "Try again." They worked in near silence for the next hour, save for the crackling fire and rhythmic strikes. Every so often, Malcolm would correct her stance or offer a clip suggestion. And slowly, she was learning, burns and all. "Forge work leaves its marks," he said, when she winced at a new blister forming on her palm. Evelyn looked up, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her soot-smeared hand. "So does life." He stared at her a beat longer than necessary, then looked away. Outside, the town stirred with new energy. Word of Evelyn's standoff with the Prescott brothers had traveled fast. Folks were returning, some curious, some hopeful. The cooperative shipments, even with the loss of a few wagons, had rekindled something close to belief. Silver Hollow was no longer just dying quietly. It was clawing its way back. That evening, Evelyn sat on the porch steps of Ida Walsh's boarding house, a stack of invoices in her lap and ink staining her fingers. Malcolm emerged from the shadows like a man half-decided, carrying something wrapped in canvas. "Your reward," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" He unwrapped the canvas and revealed a rose, delicately forged from black iron, each petal shaped by hand. Evelyn stared at it, stunned. "You made this?" Malcolm gave a single nod. "Started it after the Prescott business. Took longer than I expected." She ran her fingers along the cold, beautiful shape. "It's, incredible." "Why?" He shifted uncomfortably. "You said you wanted proof I was more than just fire and steel. And this is it." "It's a start." Evelyn didn't smile. She looked at him like she was trying to decide if she could survive letting her guard down. "I've never had anyone make me something before. Not like this." Malcolm leaned on the porch railing, arms crossed. "I don't make things for people who don't matter." A quiet passed between them, not awkward, but expectant, like two people watching the same horizon, waiting for the same sun to rise. The night of the harvest dance arrived with frost on the ground and lanterns strung between the buildings. The community hall flickered with warm light, laughter, and music spilling into the dark. Evelyn stepped inside wearing a simple blue dress Ida had lent her. It wasn't fancy, but it fit like it belonged to her. Malcolm was already there, standing awkwardly near the wall in a clean shirt and black vest. His beard was trimmed, his hair tamed, and his posture more rigid than usual. "You clean up well," she said as she approached. "You don't look like someone who ever worked a forge," he muttered, eyes flicking down then quickly away. "I can still out-hammer you," she teased. His lips twitched. "We'll test that tomorrow." They danced once, stiffly, awkwardly, but by the second song, Malcolm's hand rested on the small of her back with surprising ease. They moved in quiet circles, and for a town rebuilt on debt and defiance, this was peace. At the edge of the room, Tom Bradley raised a glass toward them. To our forge master and the woman who refuses to quit. Laughter followed, but not mockery, just admiration. Later, as the music faded and the lanterns dimmed, Evelyn and Malcolm stepped out into the cold. Snowflakes drifted lazily across the moonlit sky. "I thought I'd come here to marry a stranger," she said. "And now? Now I might stay for a man I actually respect." Malcolm's eyes searched hers. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you." He hesitated. "There's more work to do. More storms coming." "I'm not afraid of storms." "I know," he said, then added, "Thank you for staying." Evelyn reached for his hand, calloused, warm, strong. "Thank you for letting me in." They stood like that for a long time, two stubborn souls forged by circumstance, finally softened by something neither of them had expected. Tomorrow the forge would burn again, and maybe, just maybe, so would something between them. The first snow of December fell softly over Silver Hollow, blanketing the town in white and muffling the sound of hooves and wagon wheels. Smoke curled from a handful of chimneys. Once that might have seemed like a sign of decline. Now it looked like survival. Evelyn Harper stood at the window of the forge, sleeves rolled up, face smudged with soot, and a quiet smile curving her lips. She was no longer an outsider. She was of this place now. A blacksmith's apprentice, a bookkeeper, a woman who had faced down outlaws and rebuilt a town's faith. One ledger and one iron nail at a time. Behind her, Malcolm Reed watched silently. His arms were folded across his chest, but there was none of the guarded tension she'd once seen in him. There was something else now, something warmer, steadier. He'd learned to let her in. "You planning to stand there all day, Harper?" he said, a faint glint in his eye. She turned, arching a brow. "I was admiring your improved inventory system. You know, the one I fixed." "You improved it," he conceded, "but it was my idea to stop recording everything in chicken scratch." She laughed, stepping toward him. "Only because you couldn't read your own notes." "I didn't need to," he muttered. "I remembered it all." "Well," she said, reaching for her scarf, "maybe I'll start charging you for memory backup." He caught her hand before she could pull away. "You charging me for the dance tonight, too?" Evelyn's lips twitched. "That depends. Are you going to actually dance this time, or stand on the wall pretending to look busy?" "I figured I'd do both," he said, "but only if you're there to distract everyone from how bad I am." "You'll manage," she said, softer now. "We both did." Outside, the town was bustling in a way it hadn't in years. The harvest dance wasn't just a celebration of the season, it had become a symbol, an act of defiance against the decay. Families from nearby ranches had returned. Children ran through the streets, laughter echoing off buildings that no longer looked like tombstones. The new trading post, with its bold sign and fresh paint, stood like a promise. Ida Walsh had spent all morning baking bread and sweet pies. Sam Briggs had given out ribbons to decorate the community hall. Even Old Man Doyle had donated a barrel of cider, grumbling the whole time but clearly proud to be part of something again. And tonight, for the first time, Evelyn would attend as more than a guest. She was part of the town's spine now. As evening fell, the hall glowed with lamplight and garlands of evergreen and red ribbon. The band struck up a fiddle tune that had more heart than rhythm, but no one minded. There was food, laughter, and boots tapping on the wood plank floor. Malcolm waited by the door, a rare sight in a dark waistcoat and neatly combed hair. When Evelyn stepped inside wearing a simple cream dress with a touch of lace at the collar, the room quieted for just a second. She didn't need frills to shine. She walked like a woman who'd earned every admiring glance. Malcolm extended his hand. "I figured I'd better ask before someone else does." She slid her hand into his. "Took you long enough." The dance wasn't perfect. Malcolm stepped on her toes twice and she nearly lost her balance during a turn. But they laughed, really laughed, and the town watched with a kind of quiet pride. This wasn't just about two people. It was about what they'd come to represent: grit, growth, and the start of something real. After the third song, Sam climbed onto a chair and raised a glass. "If I could have your attention, folks," the room settled, "I just want to say, this dance, this town, the fact that we're still here, it's got a lot to do with the lady standing over there beside our resident blacksmith." All eyes turned to Evelyn. Miss Harper walked off that stagecoach alone, with nothing but a suitcase and a lie in her pocket, Sam said, voice thick with emotion. But she didn't run. She built. She gave us a reason to believe again. And for that, we owe her more than words. A chorus of applause filled the room, followed by cheers. Ida whistled. Someone called out, "Speech!" Evelyn stepped forward slowly, cheeks flushed. "I don't know if I'm the one who saved anything," she began, "but I know I was saved. By kindness, by stubbornness, by people who refused to let this town disappear." She paused, eyes scanning the room, finding Malcolm's steady gaze. "When I arrived here, I thought I was chasing a promise. What I found was better. Purpose. And a place where even broken things get mended." The applause was louder this time, but as it faded, Malcolm stepped forward, drawing something from his coat pocket. A small iron rose. Gasps fluttered through the room. "I made this the week we met," he said. "Didn't know why at the time. Maybe I just needed something to prove I could still make something beautiful." He turned to Evelyn. "Now I know why. Evelyn Harper, will you marry me?" Silence, then a collective inhale. Evelyn's smile broke through the hush like sunrise. "Yes," she said, without hesitation. The hall exploded in cheers, boots stomping, Ida dabbing her eyes furiously. Later, after the dancing and cider and laughter had waned, Evelyn and Malcolm walked home through the snow-dusted street. The town behind them glowed with lamplight and warmth. "Cold?" he asked. "No," she said, slipping her hand into his. "For the first time in a long while, I'm exactly where I want to be." They stopped outside the forge, where the last embers glowed behind frosted windows. Evelyn looked up at him, her breath misting between them. "Do you still think Silver Hollow's a dying town?" she asked. Malcolm shook his head. "Not anymore. Not with you in it." Their kiss was quiet, slow, sure, the kind that didn't need witness. And above them, snowflakes fell like promises, each one soft, small, and filled with the quiet power of beginnings. And just like that, from a lie in a letter to a life built by hand, Evelyn and Malcolm forged more than just iron. They forged hope in a forgotten town. But now it's your turn to speak. Why do you think Malcolm rejected Evelyn at first? Was it fear, grief, or something deeper? Which moment in the story hit you the hardest? Was it the forged rose, the standoff with the gang, or that quiet walk through the snow? And tell us this, where in the world are you watching from tonight? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story stirred something in you, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because tomorrow we're sharing a tale even more unforgettable. We'll see you there, friend.